Welcome to Just Sayin, the podcast that gives you an insider's view of the health issues that most affect our lives. Join my guests as we explore public health and personal and sexual health from the perspective of LGBTQ+ communities and allies. I'm your host, Dr. Bill Valenti. In the second of our three-part series with Dr. Michael Mendoza, Monroe County's Commissioner of Public Health, we talk about similarities among pandemics, from polio to COVID, and how they impact society.
I think it's hard for anybody to make sense out of the unknown without somehow falling into a camp, because the way we think about uncertainty is made easier if we can find a pattern to fit our uncertainties and our beliefs into.
Science should be a unifying force, but as we saw with COVID, many people disputed the facts about the disease and about vaccine. Dr. Michael Mendoza takes on the role of a coach to motivate residents in a public health crisis. Just saying, I'm Dr. Bill Valenti. What do you think about the similarities across our pandemic experience? Now, I grew up in the polio era and participated in the Salk vaccine trials as a school kid. So that was my first pandemic experience. HIV, the big one. But since then, in fairly rapid order, we've seen the emergence of COVID, monkeypox, and even polio. Again,
Yep.
I feel like I've come full circle. I guess the question, you have some good answers today, so let me ask you this question then, and that is, what can we carry across epidemics, pandemics, and outbreaks so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel each time we confront something like that?
I think sadly reinventing the wheel to some degree is inevitable. Because if you look across history at pandemics, and this is a notion that is written about by a mentor of mine, Dr. Nicholas Christakis. He's a professor of ethics and a physician at Yale, I believe now. I worked with him in Chicago, and he wrote a book not long ago. It came out during the pandemic, where he describes the unifying feature across all pandemics is that they, in some fashion, polarize society. You think of all of the pandemics that we've had. The Spanish flu was a polarized issue. Began with military, and there was complicated views about the military then that have continued. Fast forward to HIV, obviously polarization, a lot of stigmatization, a lot of alienation of the LGBTQ community at the time. COVID, no stranger to polarization, falling along political lines. And with monkeypox, again, there was this, sort of targeting the MSM population. Pandemics, I think, are inherently polarizing because they are predicated on a novel pathogen, and how people manage uncertainty gets at the core of how people manage fear and the things that are hard to explain. And I think it's hard for anybody to make sense out of the unknown without somehow falling into a camp, because the way we think about uncertainty is made easier if we can find a pattern to fit our uncertainties and our beliefs into.
Do you think that conspiracy theories then sort of arise out of that polarization? Seems like uncertainty and trying to find an explanation for something that's really terrifying.
Yeah. I think conspiracy theories have taken on new power in COVID because of the rapidity that social media can amplify misinformation and disinformation. I think that's different now than it was even with, measles wasn't long ago. We didn't have that degree of political, and it was, but social media really took off, in early 2000s. But I think there is some conspiracy theories are, they're propagated by people who don't know how to manage uncertainty either, and find that some theory like this serves value because it provides them a way to make order out of chaos.
Well, science, I'd hope, would provide some kind of anchor.
Right.
And how do we then convey that to people who are more on the conspiracy side or doubters in terms of vaccine to try and help people understand the science, what it is, and why we say what we say?
Right. Well, if you look at a unifying characteristic of those who ascribe to conspiracy theories, it tends to be people who are less educated. Presumably, they've had less access to science for a variety of reasons. And that, I believe, is the true casualty in COVID, is that I think we used to respect science and scientists in ways that we do not now. To some degree, I'm both a political appointee, public official, so I can see why people project those sorts of things on me. But at the end of the day, I'm a physician, I'm a scientist. I believe in empiric data. That's how I make my decisions, and then I convey them as recommendations to a patient or to a population. Coaching. And that was sort of the goal I had through this pandemic, is to coach the community.
But coaching the community, now that's an interesting concept because we've certainly done enough media and interviews and that sort of thing, the education of, well, that's community health. That's what public health does. And but I like the term coaching. It conveys a different feel to what you're doing and what you're trying to do.
I think it's not unlike what we do as physicians. I think, the physician who thinks that his or her patient is always thinking about the medical advice first and foremost is probably not thinking about it hard enough, because our patients are only with us for, in a given year, maybe a couple hours.
Yeah.
So I want to be that influence that's coaching them through how they navigate every day.
You also have the advantage of reaching a large population, this big swath of the community in terms of...
Right. But what's different there is that I can't know the entire community as well as I might know an individual. So part of my challenge is in reading the audience and pitching the message at the right time in the right way, and being thoughtful about the things I don't know. Because I can do that with a patient somewhat more easily, because we're talking about actual circumstances.
Give us an example of how you would try to reach the largest audience possible and the message that you want to convey to ground people a little bit better and maybe keep them away from conspiracy thinking.
If there was one message I could convey, it's that good information is available and it's your right to get it. And asking questions is important of people that you trust. And if I can be that trustworthy source for some, wonderful. I won't be for all. And nobody in my office before me was either. But if we can make trusted sources of information available to everybody in this community, we will all be better off. And that can be a clergy person. It can be a teacher, educator. I mean, all swaths of our society can be educators at some level, as long as we're armed with accurate information and we're humbled to know that there are things that we don't know.
That wraps up episode 2 of our special 3-part series of Just Sayin. In the next episode, Dr. Mendoza talks about climate change, MPOX, and preparing for the next pandemic. Read my blog and listen to past episodes of Just Sayin at drbillvalenti.com. That's drbillvalenti.com. You can also follow us on Facebook at Bill Valenti MD and on YouTube. Just Sayin is a production of Dr. Bill Media, LLC in Rochester, New York. Special thanks to Dr. Michael Mendoza and his team at the Monroe County Department of Public Health. Brynn Capwell produced this show. Patti Singer is our health reporter. Video and audio captured by Matt Wittmeyer. I'm Dr. Bill Valenti. Until next time.